Hi 6 to 9 friends. I wanted to walk you through the next steps, kind of lesson day number 2 officially, of creating your Alebrije. Your Alebrije should end up being a collage, and we're going to talk about what that looks like. Yesterday I tried to record a quick little video for you to try to get you started on the next steps. I'm going to review that part quickly here so you don't necessarily have to watch both, and then show you what to do next. So the important word for today is texture. Texture is the way that something feels or the way that something looks like it feels. We can think of some immediate textures right off the bat. We can think of rough and smooth. You can think of hairy and bumpy. So I'm sure there's lots of textures that you can think of. When we're making three-dimensional art, like a sculpture, then texture is the way that it actually feels. Something like a sculpture is something we can reach out and we can touch and we can actually feel it. But a two-dimensional piece of artwork, that's like something drawn on a paper. If something's drawn on a paper, there's not really any texture there. So we have to work on creating some implied texture. That means we're trying to use lines and shapes and value, or maybe even patterns, to make it look like it has a texture, to make it look like if we touched it, it would feel a certain way. I'm going to show you a couple things that you can use from around your house to create some texture. We're going to be creating texture on multiple different pieces of our construction paper that we'll then use for the different parts of our animal that we're putting together in a collage to create our Alebrije. For your supplies today, you'll need your pieces, your rectangles of construction paper. Think about using lots of the bright colors that you have left, and think about maybe having 4 to 6 sheets. I want you to look at your sketch of your Alebrije and figure out how many different components or body parts are you going to put together to create an Alebrije from. So you'll probably need at least 4, if not more, depending on how elaborate your design is. You're going to need your oil pastels. Oil pastels are a supply we haven't used yet, and they were available for pickup like 2 weeks ago from your teachers. They were in your bag with the rest of your school stuff. Oil pastels are really similar to crayons, except instead of the wax that they have in them, they have oil. It gives it a smoother application and also a thicker application. These are great for blending. We're going to use them, we're going to peel the wrappers off and use them to create some really nice textures on our construction paper. And if you don't have anything that you think you can make textures out of, creating a bunch of patterned pieces of paper will be just fine too. So your construction paper, colored pieces, and your oil pastels. We're creating a collage. Remember, collage is the French word that means to glue, or comes from the French word that means to glue. You need your little bottle of glue, and you're going to need your scissors, because we'll be cutting the different parts of our animal, our Alebrije's body, out of our pattern construction paper pieces. You're going to need a black piece of construction paper. I included 2 in your packet, and you're going to need one of them to be the background for your Alebrije. And then you're going to need some things that can create some textures. I'm going to switch my camera so I can show you some of the different texture pieces that I have created, and so give you some ideas of things that you can use. So if we were in the art room, I have some great texture rubbing plates. You can see that these have a raised surface. I think you can see they have a raised surface. So when I lay paper on top and then rub my crayon across, the crayon captures the raised area and creates a texture from it on my paper. So if we were in the art room, we would have the opportunity to use these. But since we're not in the art room, we can do some problem solving at home, and we can find plenty of textures around our house that would help us to create some patterns. Different types of fabric can be great for creating textures because it's a woven texture. So this is burlap. It's a little stiffer, and burlap has a woven texture. That means it's going over, under, just like we did our circular weaving. That means the spots that are over are raised up above the spots that are under. So then when I use my piece of paper and I put it over top and do the rubbing, I'm going to get a texture. Leaves are also something that can create a texture. On the under surface of the leaf are all of the veins that run through your leaf. And those veins stick up and they're raised in spots. So anything that you have that has raised edges or a raised pattern or design to it can be the perfect thing to create a rubbing. I'm going to show you how a couple of these different things will look. Let's start with the texture plates. In order to create a rubbing, I need to peel the wrapper off of my oil pastels because I want to use them on the side. So you can see the oil pastels do break kind of easy, but that's okay. We actually want smaller pieces sometimes. That works out well. My chickens are very curious to know what we're doing. I'm worried one's going to hop right on top of my paper. Don't be alarmed if that happens. So if I use it on its side, and my helper hand has a job of holding my paper steady, and then I rub it across, you see where it's really creating the texture by capturing the raised spots. Okay? So that's what it looks like with a texture plate. So what does it look like with some found materials at home? I'm going to use my white for this part. So my burlap creates this kind of nice spotted texture with a woven fabric. Oh, my leaf is falling apart. It's a good thing I'm outside. I can find another one. Okay. You can see that it's raised up in the spots where the veins are exposed. So you see 3 different ways that I've captured some texture onto my paper. So your job is to do that, to cover whole sheets of paper in a couple different spots. Now, if you don't think you can find anything that would be good for rubbing texture, that's okay. You can also just draw some patterns on some paper. So use your lines and create some cool patterns that would fill the space. So I'm giving you lots of examples on one piece of paper, but you should do your texture rubbing or your pattern to fill a whole piece of paper and then do a different style on a different piece of paper. What we're going to end up doing is cutting each individual piece out of one of our pieces of paper there. So your black construction paper is going to be the base for your art assignment. And as you're creating all the different pieces, you're going to lay them out and plot the places where they'll go. You want to wait to use your glue until the very end of your assignment because you want to be sure about where things are going to go. And it's hard to know that until you've cut out each individual piece. So here's a piece that I already created with one of the texture plates. What I need to do is I need to look at my plan. This is the plan that I drew in class with everyone on Monday. And it's got kind of a lion head. It's got some sort of paws. It's got different feet back here with some talons. So maybe these are chicken or bird talons. I've got some bat wings and a fox tail. So I tried to do each different part of my animal was kind of different. Well, each different part of my animal should be done on one of my textured or patterned pieces, except for maybe the face. The actual face I should probably do on one of my white pieces of project paper, because that is where I can actually draw all the facial features. If I try to draw my facial features on top of a patterned piece of paper, it's going to be hard to tell. So make sure that that maybe is in white paper, but I could use patterned pieces for the nose. Could be a little triangle of a textured or patterned piece. The eyeballs could be part of a patterned piece. So then the mane will be part of a patterned piece. I'll cut my 2 front legs out of one patterned piece of paper, my wings out of another, my tail out of another, my back legs out of another, and my body out of another. So I'm going to use multiple different pieces. You could repeat the same piece if you run out of paper, but I'd really like to see if each different one could be different. Because what we noticed about the Alebrijes is that they were full of bright color and they were totally full of patterns. So this is helpful to have nearby. So your sketch should be in your sketchbook, which means it should be close by for reference, because as you do each piece, you're going to want to draw straight from it. So you would get your pencil and you would draw your individual piece. I'm going to show you how I would do the head, and then I'll show you all the pieces kind of put together. So I'm going to look about the same size, because I know this size is going to fit on my whole piece of paper. So I'm going to draw just the basic shape, and I'm going to go ahead while I'm here and let's draw my facial features here. And I'm just going to draw the outline of my eyes. Alright, so I drew the basic outline. I'm going to leave my eyes blank because I'm going to draw those and cut those out of a piece of paper. So this is the basic shape that I'm ready to get started with. You might want to take a marker to draw in the facial features so that they really stand out on your piece. And then it's time for me to use my scissors. I'm going to be really safe with my scissors. I'm going to use my helper hand to turn my paper so that my scissors stay pointing away from me and I'm never cutting back towards my body. And my helper hand is turning the paper to make it easy as pie to cut out my face. Set this aside. I might use that for something else. Now, cutting out the face was important because I want to do my lion mane. So now I can use that there for guidance so that when I draw a lion mane shape around it, I know that it's going to work well in my piece. And I'm just going to cut away here till I cut all the pieces. So you'll need to do this for each different part of your animal's body. I'm not going to show you all the steps through because that video will be too long and you will get too bored watching me do each step of my video. So I'll stop my video and I'll come back when all my pieces are cut out and show you how to lay it out to make sure that it looks how you want it to look, and then give you some reminders about gluing it down. As you're cutting, remember you're responsible for cleaning up, so go ahead and just make a nice neat pile of your paper scraps off to the side. Remember to think about keeping the pieces that you like. Okay, I'm going to go cut everything else out, and I'll be back in a moment to lay them all out for you. Okay, I got all my pieces here. All cut out of textured and patterned spaces. So I'm going to start laying them out and putting them together. So I have my lion head and mane. I even cut some eyeballs out of that scrap of paper. I cut a nice oval shape to be its body. Even cut a little triangle for his nose. I cut out my bat wings. And some of my pieces might go off the edge of my paper, and that is okay. I've got my foxtail. I've got my legs, my back legs, my kind of chicken legs on the back legs. And then I've got more like paw type legs on the front legs. All right, so this is what our final piece is going to look like. You can see I drew some patterns on some, I did some rubbings on others. So use a combination of the two or just one type depending on what you can find lying around your house. Then you're going to use your glue to glue it down. Remember when you're gluing that you want to trace the outline of the shape that you want to glue down. The first thing you should glue down, I'm going to glue down the little parts onto my face first and then start gluing I glue the smaller pieces onto the big pieces first, and then I'm going to glue the big pieces in place. And again, I'm going to make sure that I trace the outline with my glue so that the edges stay down. On a bigger spot like this, I'd also put a little bit of circle or an X through the middle to make sure that I have enough glue to hold the larger pieces in place. So those are all the steps to make your Alebrije collage, using some patterns and some textures to create each individual piece of the different animals you combined for your Alebrije. I can't wait to see your final pieces. The ones I've seen that are being worked on so far look amazing. And I think all the bright colors and all of the patterns when we put them together are going to be some of our favorite work from this quarter. If you have any questions, send me a message. I can't wait to see your work uploaded on Friday. Remember, you can always turn your work in person to your teachers, and they will make sure it gets to me. Enjoy your artwork. See you next time.